When we think of someone that is defined by their failure, we do not think of a great warrior, a wise mentor, a true leader, a friend, a confidant, a guardian. And yet, that is exactly what you will find in Jedi Masters Obi-Wan Kenobi and Yoda. Two individuals defined by their great failure. A failure to stop the rise of the Sith. A failure of being a master in their own right. The galaxy falling into an era of darkness because of your inability to stop something more powerful that was waiting. Watching as you grew arrogant, grew stubborn. And yet, despite all of this, Yoda and Obi-Wan Kenobi are some of the greatest examples of failure defining somebody, and how they chose to use that failure to better themselves and the Jedi Order, the next generation. So today, my friends, let's talk about Yoda. Let's talk about what led to this great failure, how Yoda himself contributed to it, and how in the end he used that to change the Jedi, to teach his new student in Luke Skywalker to change the Jedi, and to finally right the wrongs that failure taught him, that only failure could have taught him. Greetings, my friends, and welcome back to the channel. Today, we will be analyzing the shortcomings of Yoda. When Yoda says that failure is his greatest teacher, what does he mean? What failure is Yoda speaking of? Yoda's greatest shortcoming was an inability to adapt the Jedi's philosophy and practices to the ever-evolving and changing galaxy, particularly in the face of the rise of the Sith and the Republic's deep-seated, intrinsic corruption that caused the Jedi to not help those that needed them, and forced the Jedi to help those that would hurt others. In truth, the Republic had broken the Jedi, made them their slaves, their dogs that they could order around. And Yoda, in loyalty to a greater system, was complacent in that corruption. His greatest critics may even call him a byproduct of it. This rigidity blinded Yoda to the deeper threats posed by Sidious, the growing discontent within the Jedi Order itself. One of the major key aspects of his shortcomings is his overconfidence in the Jedi's wisdom and their power at the time. This is a criticism that Palpatine gives to him directly in their duel in the Senate Hall. And with this criticism, he's absolutely correct. Yoda is overconfident in the Jedi's power. Yoda believed deeply in the Jedi traditions, their role as protectors of peace. However, this confidence led to complacency, and he underestimated the cunning and adaptability of his enemy, the Sith. As the Sith's return mounted, Yoda failed to recognize the full extent of their infiltration and manipulation. He had been standing in the room with one for years. Yoda adhered to the rigid interpretation of the Jedi Code, discouraging emotional attachment, and even emphasizing detachment. While this philosophy aimed to prevent the temptations of the dark side inherently, it often alienated Jedi like Anakin Skywalker, those who struggled with their humanity, those who struggled with their emotion. Yoda's advice to Anakin was to let go of all you fear to lose, and this failed to address Anakin and his true, deep emotional turmoil. Yoda did this because he did not fully understand emotions in general. He had learned to keep them at bay, to teach others how to keep them at bay. Yoda and the Jedi Order became entangled in the politics of the Republic, serving as the generals in the Clone Wars, something that they were never supposed to be. The Jedi are not supposed to be soldiers. They align themselves directly with a corrupt government. They tied themselves to it permanently. This compromised their neutrality, not only politically, but within the Force itself. The Jedi speak entirely about balance, but by aligning with the Republic in its entirety, and by placing the needs of the Republic above the needs of even the Force and the galaxy around it, the Jedi Order was cosmically doomed to fail. It was Sidious who remade the Jedi in this era. He made them tools of war. He eroded their morality, their authority in the eyes of the galaxy. He broke what the Jedi were meant to be, not only in the eyes of the citizens, but in the hearts of the Jedi. Yoda's teachings focused on the Jedi's traditional methods, ill-suited to confront the Sith's more modern strategy. He emphasized meditation, patience, and adherence to doctrine, but the galaxy's circumstances required more adaptive and a proactive leader, which Yoda was not. Yoda was a reactionary leader, reactionary on behalf of the Republic. Yoda failed to recognize that the Jedi needed to reform themselves, and while he fought valiantly to protect the Republic, his failure to address the deep systemic issues within the Jedi allowed Sidious to gain power rapidly. But with all of that said, Yoda is somebody that learns. Even as the Grand Master, he is still ever connected to the Force, to the moving galaxy around him, and Yoda admits that he is wrong. He recognizes these shortcomings, and he takes active steps to improve upon it, to change himself, to change the next generation of Jedi. Yoda takes it upon himself to reform what was broken, to reforge the old code. And although he is still very rigid in the Jedi way, and it is Luke that teaches Yoda to forgive, not only Vader, but to forgive himself, to move past these flaws, but it still took new eyes, a new perspective. The teacher is learning just as much as the student. In Exile on Dagobah, Yoda recognized these failures. He sought to pass on his wisdom to Luke. His teaching shifted. He emphasized not just the Jedi Code, but instead spoke of the importance of embracing failure as the great teacher that it is. This shift in perspective allowed Luke to succeed where the Jedi Order had failed, bring balance to the Force through Anakin, and Yoda's greatest shortcoming became the greatest lesson for the future, for the next generation of Jedi. We often speak of how great, grand, powerful, and wise Luke Skywalker is, but we have to remember that without Yoda, everything that Luke became would never be. Without the previous failures of the Jedi Order, without learning from failure as their greatest teacher, there is no Grandmaster Luke Skywalker. There is no Return of the Jedi. Failure is the greatest teacher because it forces us to confront our limitations, to directly learn from the mistakes, and grow stronger because of it. It provides lessons that success alone cannot offer. It helps us develop resilience, self-awareness, a deeper understanding of ourselves and the world. Failure encourages innovation. It teaches humility. It teaches us that we are far from perfect and that there is always room for growth, even as a Grand Master of the Jedi Order of 900. And perhaps most important of all, failure deepens empathy. Experience allows us to help us understand the struggles of others, making us more compassionate, supportive in our relationships, and understanding of others' failures. Failure is a powerful teacher. It exposes us to the raw realities of effort and perseverance. Embracing failure is a part of the learning process. We transform in our setbacks, and maybe failure can be a step towards success. Yoda learned not to fear failure, and it was this fear of failure that was Yoda's greatest weakness. But by embracing it, accepting it as a part of himself, and addressing it, Yoda learned and he overcame. Yoda viewed failure as essential, as invaluable, and because of that, because of his failure, the Jedi would return. Peace in the galaxy would be restored. The rebellion would triumph. Anakin Skywalker would be redeemed, and Yoda would be at peace in the Force. But with that, my friends, what are your thoughts on Yoda? What are your thoughts on Yoda's greatest failure? And what has been your own experience with failure in your life? As always, my friends, thank you so much for visiting the archives today, and may the Force be with you.